Hi there, and welcome to The Wrap, simple news updates for busy people, brought to you by Verashni Pillay, myself, Sarah Evans, and the Explain.coza team. In this week's edition, we take a look at how Cyril Ramaphosa and his cabinet have consistently listened to science and apologized to him for laughing at his little mask mishap. In the big story, the state's taps may finally be closed to public servants, but only if Cyril Ramaphosa acts. In our news briefs, we wish the Arch a happy birthday. And in international news, Harris keeps Pence on the back foot. Let's dive in. No business associate or immediate family member of any public servant should do business with the state. Sounds good, right? So you'd think that those who represent public servants would be the most against it, correct? Think again. COSATU, a labour federation representing largely government-employed nurses, teachers and the like, are the ones behind the proposal. It's a stunning, if rather bleeding obvious, solution to an age-old South African problem: officials looting from state coffers via their spouse, children and associates' businesses. But the officials doing the looting are the ones up the food chain, and it's costing those at the bottom the most. We all know Finance Minister Tito Mboweni needs to cut costs when he presents his budget this month. Civil servants are likely to feel the pain the most. They already won't get increases this year. Why should nurses and teachers have to carry the burden of a government crippled by looting when some municipal managers earn more than ministers do? Yes, really. And private sector baddies like Steinhoff bosses are not in jail. COSATU's proposal was amazingly agreed to by business and labour. That's a bit like trying to get oil and water to agree on a choice of salad dressing for the main course. It's a pretty great show of unity, following the PPE tender corruption that shamed the nation. But it's far from becoming policy. The proposal was heavily resisted at a meeting of the ANC's top dogs over the weekend. And the resistance reportedly came from across the party, not just the state capture faction. Trade unions are pushing back, and with good reason. They're having to pay the bill for stolen money. So unions are making a noise. On Wednesday, COSATU and independent trade union SAFTU went on a national strike over unemployment and corruption. The ANC fighting this proposal is just plain stupid. Our country needs this sort of policy. News that there's tension between unions and government generally is about as shocking as Margaret Thatcher's grey pantsuits, so not at all. But the ANC and President Cyril Ramaphosa need their support. The party's argument that the proposal may be unfair and infringe on personal freedoms doesn't hold water. A legal opinion has already stated that such a law would be perfectly constitutional, as the Financial Mail reported this week. COSATU helped Ramaphosa become ANC president in 2017. Now it is hinting at withholding support for him. Even if Ramaphosa can win without them, his reform agenda demands the party should implement this proposal. In our take this week, we at Explain would like to apologize to President Cyril Ramaphosa for laughing when he fumbled while trying to demonstrate how to use a face mask months ago. Watching a billionaire businessman epically fail at wearing a mask was hilarious at the time, but across the Atlantic, another billionaire businessman failed at wearing one, and it was decidedly less funny. In case you missed it, the leader of the free world has a serious case of the Rona. It now appears that Donald Trump has managed to infect half of Washington with COVID-19 thanks to his aversion to wearing a mask and maintaining social distance from anyone but the Democrats. This was evident when he did a drive-by in Washington this week with a car full of people. Some drive-bys involve gangsters spewing bullets. This one featured Trump spewing, you get the picture. The Guardian reported this week that Trump has infected at least 5 members of his inner circle, including his wife, and at least 5 senior Republican Party leaders. Last week, Trump appeared in a debate with fellow presidential contender Joe Biden and teased the latter for wearing a mask. It would be easy to poke fun at this terrible comic turn of events, were it not for the seriousness of the situation. So, we are grateful for our political leaders who have been consistent about the need for masks and social distancing throughout the pandemic, and for the vast majority of our citizens who have not made mask wearing a divisive political point in the way we've seen elsewhere. Granted, South Africa's leadership has made mistakes, but who hasn't almost poked their own eye out trying to put on their mask in a hurry at least once? In all seriousness, the fact is that Ramaphosa and his ministers have set the example by listening to the science on COVID-19 from the get-go. In our news briefs this week. Now, residents of Dakar, Senegal may have been confused this week when concerned friends and relatives called asking about rioting farmers in their neighborhood, but it was actually South Africa's Senekal in the Free State that was the scene of farmers rampaging outside a court. And in case you're wondering whether our next sentence was going to be about the police opening fire on them, you'd be wrong. Apparently that kind of thing is reserved for mine workers and students. The police reportedly stood by this week as farmers torched a police van and tried to overturn an Anyala outside court, where men accused of attacking a farmer appeared. According to the Sowetan, this was because the police did not want to jeopardize the safety of innocent bystanders. A police spokesperson was also threatened for doing her job. We would never advocate for the police to open fire on anyone. But the hypocrisy is worrying. These farmers should not be allowed to behave with impunity while the police stand by. Now, in our private sector news this week, imagine being appointed CEO, devastating your company's value, and then walking away with more than 70 million rand. That's exactly what happened at Woolworths, our go-to store for gorgeous and overpriced culinary goods. The company's former CEO, Ian Moore, will receive 43 million rand and stands to get another 34.3 million rand as a restraint of trade payment down the line. This after he made one of the worst foreign investments in SA history with the disastrous purchase of David Jones, an Australian department store chain. Under Moore, Woolworths paid over 20 billion rand for the upmarket brand. It's since written off well over half that investment. There's a lot of backlash over the windfall that the former CEO is getting, and big shareholders like Alan Gray want to have a chat with the company over the decision. After all, as shareholder activism organization Just Share has pointed out to Business Day TV, Moore's package shows the company is deaf to the context in which they operate. Now, is Ace Magashule's number up? Are the Hawks coming for ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule, who's been implicated in allegations of corruption? The National Prosecuting Authority and the Hawks have been on a roll lately with state capture arrests, see its pics, so we wouldn't be surprised. But the Hawks denied dodgy reports from IOL this week that they'd issued a warrant for the former Free State Premier's arrest. The whole thing smelled fishy like a coordinated campaign to summon sympathy for Ace. Spoiler, it didn't work. If anything, the country would probably have a celebration so big it would make Siphiwe Tshabalala's 2010 Soccer World Cup opening goal look like a day of standing in the queue at SARS. Now, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Prince Harry and Meghan's hero and everyone's favorite Anglican cleric, Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, turned 89 this week. He's one of the last remaining anti-apartheid activists of his generation, and every year that he's still with us is a treasure. Given that we lost the last living Rivonia trialist, Andrew Mlangeni, this year, we're feeling particularly sentimental. From Tutu's anti-apartheid activism to his vocal support for lesbian and gay rights, the Arch has been a voice of moral clarity in our country for decades. Recently, his activism has moved over to the environmental sphere, and his foundation has used his birthday to call for action on climate change. So from all of us at Explain, happy birthday, Arch. Now, it spawned some hilarious memes, raised questions over unremarked upon privilege, and now the South African production My Octopus Teacher has become a global hit. Last week, it won the top prize at the Global Jackson Wild Media Award, widely considered to be the Oscars of nature films, and came out on top in several major categories. It has also been featured in publications like The Washington Post as a must-see, with some celebrities filming their reactions and vowing never to eat octopus again. The simple docu, mostly shot underwater, captures a year that producer Craig Foster spent with a wild common octopus and how it changed him. Check it out on Netflix. Now this week, we premiere our new explainer series on accountability called Accountability Monitor. We'll be tracking the latest in corruption-related arrests in both the public and private sectors. Head to explain.coza to read our first edition. This week, we're talking about VBS. VBS's former CFO, Philip Truter, has pleaded guilty to fraud and corruption and has been sentenced to an effective 7 years in jail. This follows the collapse of the VBS Bank, in which millions, including the pensions of the poor and elderly, were allegedly stolen to enrich banking executives. There have even been allegations that the money was siphoned off to the EFF and the ANC, but the parties deny it. The question now is, who will Truter take down with him? And is the EFF's Floyd Shivambu a little or a lot scared? In international news, off the back of the disastrous US presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden last week, vice presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Mike Pence went toe-to-toe on Wednesday night. Well, it was more like well-heeled toe to flat-footed one. Harris kept Pence on the back foot from the first minute. When confronted with his administration's failures on the coronavirus, Pence, with all the emotional depth of a teaspoon, offered condolences to the families of the more than 210,000 Americans who have died as the result of the virus. The debate also highlighted a terrible double standard in politics. Black women, like Harris, are held to remarkably higher standards than white men like Pence. Instead of offering his ideas and defending them, Pence, with drone-like platitudes, spent the debate defending his boss, Trump. Harris, on the other hand, had to show that she is her own candidate. Fortunately, she is her own candidate, and it showed on Wednesday night. And, quote, undeniable talent, unquote, as the New York Times called her, Harris didn't let Pence off the hook on his administration's failures and refused to let him talk over her. A lawyer by training, she is the former Attorney General of California, a position similar to our head of public prosecutions. Harris has her flaws too, and her track record on criminal justice is controversial. But on the whole, watching undeniable talent obliterate Trump's second-in-command was a pleasant reminder that there is still hope for the future of American politics, and that hope is black and a woman. On to African news. Sudanese artists are standing up for democracy. On Thursday, pro-democracy activists and artists in the Sudanese city of Omdurman will release a charter for the protection of art and artists. This follows the imprisonment of a group of artists in the northeast African country, which was run by dictator Omar al-Bashir for 30 years until a coup last year ended his rule. A group of artists, including a film director, was sentenced to 2 months in jail for causing a public nuisance while they were rehearsing a theatre workshop. But the group believes the government, of which they are highly critical, is trying to silence them. The sentences were overturned, but 6 other activists remain in jail. The activists and artists are currently staging a 4-day-long artistic revolutionary sit-in. On to more international news. It was a good week for women in the various Nobel Prizes. Of the awards announced so far, women took honours for chemistry, literature, and were part of a joint win for physics. US poet Louise Gluck became one of 16 women to have won in literature in 119 years, among them essay's own Nadine Gordimer. On the physics side, 3 scientists shared the prize, including Andrea Ghez, the 4th woman to be awarded a Nobel Prize in physics. She said, "I hope I can inspire other young women into the field. It is a field that has so many pleasures, and if you are passionate about science, there is so much that can be done." The big question is who will take home the most well-known of all prizes, the Nobel Peace Prize, set to be announced tomorrow. Environmental activist Greta Thunberg and New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern have been mentioned as possible awardees and could continue the streak of women winning. Now, for stories on our radar this week. Former President Jacob Zuma is meant to appear before the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture on October 9, but he has once again come up with a reason not to and is unhappy with how he's been subpoenaed. It's unclear whether he'll turn up at all. Finance Minister Tito Mboweni is counting down the days to the midterm budget speech on October 21. In the coming week, Parliament's committees will submit recommendations on how Mboweni should divide up the budget. The second US presidential debate is scheduled for October 15, but Donald Trump is refusing new rules to debate remotely with Joe Biden, saying he didn't think it was contagious. Right. So it's debatable whether or not it will go ahead at all. Head over to explain.coza to find our EDS picks of the week, which include a breakdown of why the latest state capture arrests matter, ANC's new economic plan, and our feature on COVID-19 second waves around the world. That's it from us at The Wrap, a product of explain.coza, simple news summaries for busy people. Remember to share the love and tell your friends to sign up for the updates at explain.coza/subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from Verashni, Sarah, Samina, Arti, and Natasha.